Oh my gosh, is it just me? Oh, can you only see Greg right now? Is Greg talking and it's Pip's voice? Hold on.
That's weird.
Right, right, hold on. Oh, there's me. Hi. If you're joining us today, Greg and I, Greg, you're right there. Oh, you're right there. um, Greg and I, we are talking about image optimization. I am very excited about this topic because Greg and I are both coming from it at slightly different angles. My angle being the better one, of course. Uh,
What? No.
right? But Greg and I don't get to get on here as much together. So
I
if
know. I thought you were gonna say we're the OGs or
Oh,
something.
I had to ask somebody what an OG was. That's how old I am, people. Um,
What?
I also think my generation should have come up with the word lit because I think we're that cool. That'd be Generation X, but I think every generation is rock and roll cool. To be honest, right? Right?
I initially thought it just meant original, but it's original gangster.
Yeah, yeah. OG.
Yeah.
So in your business name,
I know. I was gonna totally reserve something OG.
you should have. You should have. So, guys, if you have questions, or y'all, if you have questions today, pop them in the chat. I'm going to be paying attention to the Facebook group to find us to make sure that I know who's watching. But and we're going to get right down to business because that's what we're all here for, right, Greg? The
Absolutely.
business of marketing. Okay, so what are we going through today? We're going through the different types of images, talking about size of images, and we're talking about like images for your website and SEO. And we just had a quick discussion on mobile first, but we'll get to that at the end. So if you're joining us, pop a hello in the comments where you're listening from and if you optimize your images. Greg, tell me about those sizes that you or types.
Well, types for web and I mean even social, but we're talking more for web visitors or for your website and being optimized for SEO on the web. So mainly, it's been JPEG, GIF, and PNGs. Up until now, that's been the wide three that have been most supported, and they have different use cases between all three of when you want to use them and what kind of an image they are that you use on your site. Now, there's a third one. Actually, there's two more that are
What?
widely used or can be um, used coming up. WebP is the big one that is a much smaller physical file size, which will make it load so much more quick. But there is some issues still with browser support. Not all browsers fully support the WebP image type yet, but it's getting better. And also in last week's Geek Speak, I had mentioned that WordPress in their next 5.8 update will be natively supporting WebP.
Is I didn't realize that you actually mentioned that last week. That is very exciting news.
Yeah. And the second file type that is not used too much by many people is SVG,
Okay.
scalable vector graphic.
And that isn't that what people use for their logos?
People, well, you can use them for any type of image, really, but they're mainly used for logos or icon packs. A lot of icon packs are SVGs
Wow.
now, and the SVG type is a lot smaller than using say a PNG, a GIF, or a JPEG icon.
Oh, okay, okay. Aster's here. Hey, Aster. She knows about images. Uh and she loves SVG. Yeah. I I'm only strong in images when it comes to SEO. So I'm going to learn a lot here. And of course, I've got some good questions, which is um here's a good question for you, Greg, out of the blue. So say somebody comes to you with a website already made and you're an SEO person. Um and they're about to launch it, but they've come to you asking you, hey, can you look at my website? Like, let's discuss some SEO stuff. Now that they're launching WebP for WordPress, would
Hmm.
you say to that developer, like, or would you say to the owner, hey, can I talk to the developer? Because maybe when the SVG or when the WebP comes out, you the developer can do all the images again and save them as WebP to make it faster. Would you do that? What would you do? Mm.
I mean, your web developer, I guess, could help you convert all of your images
Or
to WebP,
SEO
but
person.
or your SEO person. But a web developer typically builds websites, and adding your images or exporting your images is really more your graphics person.
Mm. Okay.
If you do your graphics, or if you have a graphics person that does it, and if you want to convert everything, you can take all of your images and look into converting them to the WebP format, and then uploading them and changing them on your site. You would probably only get your developer involved if for some reason you wanted to implement some type of system where you were using them in conjunction. Like if there's a WebP version and the browser supports WebP,
Mm.
it would serve the WebP version. But if the browser that the user is using doesn't support it, it would fall back to the JPEG or GIF or PNG version. Then you might want to get a web developer involved in that
Okay.
to take care of the coding in figuring out which image to actually serve to the visitor.
Nice. Okay, that's interesting. Now, do we know which browsers do not support WebP? Do we have any idea?
Um, I do have, well, Internet Explorer, since it's not really being developed anymore, that has no support. There's pretty wide support. Older versions of Edge and Firefox don't, but newer versions do. Chrome supports it. Safari has partial support of the WebP.
Okay.
Um,
Does
Most mobile are all supporting WebP as well.
Do you know if I know so many questions, guys? Greg's getting pummeled with my questions. That's right. Do you know if like Shopify and Wix, you might not know this, do they support WebP too? Does anybody know?
Wix does, I know. Shopify, I haven't used enough to know whether what they're doing for WebP, but I would assume they probably do have something already built in that if you want to use WebP, you could.
Well, you would think that'd be true, but if WordPress is just launching it, I mean, WordPress is huge.
Yeah, but WordPress is the OG. They needed to catch up and build it in, whereas Wix and Shopify are fairly newer and more developed because they are closed platforms as well. So
Square too, right? Square. Yeah, that makes
Square, yeah, I honestly I don't know really anything about Square
yeah.
other than using it for payments once in a while.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, it's Squarespace. I don't know. There's one called Square something. I don't actually. It's the only one. We'll teach you how to add Search Console to it, but that's about all we do. WordPress is old, Aster's saying. Yes, right?
Oh,
Okay,
geez.
so those are the types. You said there's four types. Do you guys remember the four
Yeah,
types?
so I guess I'll quickly, like now that we know the types, I'll quickly go over what you're going to use
Okay.
each type for. So if you have like a beautiful image of, landscape or like a real world image,
Yeah.
you're always going to use JPEG for that.
Okay.
Um, and in the future, you'll be able to use WebP as well to get a better file size down
JPEG
for.
is JPEG is lighter than PNG. Yes, is in the kilobytes.
Not necessarily.
Oh, interesting.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So yeah, you want to use those for your really nice images and things like that. So things that like background images that just have like a pattern in it, things like that, you're probably going to stick to PNG or moving forward when it's widely supported WebP. Because it's going to be much better. And then for if you want to use a GIF, you would use that. Mainly, I use those only when I want maybe an animated GIF. So because um, you can't do that with JPEGs or PNGs. Can
Hmm.
you do PNGs? You might be able to do it PNGs, but I don't think so. I
Right.
think GIF only. You can build it in PNG, but you'd have to export it, I think, as a GIF.
Okay, so
So
Photoshop,
yeah,
there's PNG, and then so there's JPEG you can download as, and then there's PNG, and then there's
yeah.
8-bit something or other PNG.
PNG, you have different options. There's 8-bit, 16, and 32, I
Interesting.
believe they are. And each one will hold a little bit more information. 32 being it will store the most color information in the image. The 8, I believe 8 doesn't do transparent background.
Ah, interesting.
I believe I could be mistaken, but they're just different levels. So whatever your graphic is, if you don't need it, if it's like one color, like for instance, fav icons.
Yeah.
I just created a new icon because I didn't like the size of Butlers in the Buff fav icon, so I recreated it, and it was exported as a PNG 8, I believe. So yes, transparency is supported, but 8 would be the smallest file size because that icon is only one color.
Mm,
So I just used the lowest PNG export PNG 8 option.
interesting. Mona's here, and guys, just so you know, or y'all, just so you know, um, Greg and I are working on a little project together. The Butlers in the Buff. Go check them out. Free plug for them. And if you know some gentleman that's looking for a summer gig, might
I
be.
was thinking of applying for that, but I need to do a lot of working out before.
It's only topless, so I think you can handle it. I think yeah. And
I'm,
super.
I'm kidding, anyways.
We're not talking about this. You got a full time job anyway, buddy. It's for the younger generation. I think a little younger than us, 20s, right? University, college students. And they're all around the world, which is neat. So Mona says hi. We've gone through the types of images. I keep uh, pushing Greg to do other things that he didn't know he was going to do today, like explain everything. Um, Greg,
I knew I was going to explain all this.
right? Let's talk size, because
The
size
all important
matters.
size.
With images, guys, with images, get your head out of the gutter.
Getting
Anyway,
into the SEO.
okay, so tell us about now that people. I mean, how big? My monitor is the biggest you can get. How many of us have big monitors out there?
There's a lot of there's a lot of big monitors, and I've typically been exporting my files in a dimension of a maximum 1600 pixels wide, because for a long time monitors were around that size or maybe a little bit bigger, but now the norm with monitor sizes is even bigger. So 1920 is a file size that I'm starting to export a lot of my background images, because what happens is if you export at 1600 but your monitor is 1920 and this image is used as a background in your site, then and it fills the entire width, your 1600 pixel wide image is going to be stretched to 1920. So when you stretch images, you lose image quality because it gets a little pixelated because it's appearing bigger than it actually is.
Mm,
So I have started to use 1920 as my new default for background images.
mm,
Now, when it comes to the actual weight, as you refer to it, the physical size, the kgs, um, it's difficult to say. You want to get them as small as possible, but It really depends on what your image is. If it's really detailed, like if it's a tree, if it's a nature scene and there's lots of trees and leaves, all of that detail in the picture, no matter what, will be a bigger file size than an image that is more simple of maybe just the ocean and the sunset or something, where there's not a lot of color variation.
Okay. And
You'll get a much smaller file size out of that because there's not too much as much detail in.
that's really important because, okay, so first I got to say, hey, Sally, glad you're here. And John Hood has said, this is great. Yeah, totally right. This is why we're doing this, because this stuff's important. And Sally's even saying she optimizes her images even for Facebook. So we got to dive deeper into that, because did you know, just on the side, an SEO thing, Google has started indexing Facebook videos on the search engine results pages. It's crazy. We'll see. Closed systems are opening, maybe. That is another story for another day. But Greg, you're talking about sizes. And so are you going to tell your clients, like, when they provide images, like, if it's a really big image, it can't have fine detail unless they have to raise the quality, which can slow down their site if they're on WordPress or something like that?
Um, well, I always tell my clients to give me the highest resolution image they can
Okay.
so that I can optimize it for whatever use we want on the site. But I don't tell my clients like only give me images that don't have a lot of detail. You want to use the images that you want to use that relate to your business. And if the image just happens to be an image with, a lot of detail in it, then that's the image you have to use, and you have to export it and optimize it as much as you can to get that file size down. My point was basically that there's different images, and all images will not, like, if you have 7 images that they're all the exact same size, like 1920 by 1080, for instance, every one will have a slightly different file weight to it even when you optimize it, because of what the image actually is, the details, if it's a more detailed image versus maybe a more simpler image. That was my only point to get across. So for me, when I talk about optimizing images, I have no set file weight that the image needs to get to, because there's so many factors. We determine what size we need it. If we need it at 1920, for instance, or if we need it smaller, we determine that. And then we optimize that as small as we can in weight to use on the site.
Mm. And okay, yeah, because we need to for SEO. So uh Aster uses a couple techniques, lazy loading and at media settings to change out the image. And then Joshua is saying he likes Tiny PNG. I love Tiny PNG.
Mm-hmm.
People, I've actually heard of SEOs like getting the lightest, like downloading a very light image in kilobytes and then still putting it through um, Tiny PNG compressor. So even to make it lighter, we're gonna have the fastest sites when WebP comes out. Hey, would we have to use Tiny PNG if with WebP? What's the deal there?
Tiny PNG, if I recall, because I don't really use it, it basically is a service, I think, that you can just have, you can send your image to it and it'll
You upload your
rescale it for
Yeah,
you.
you upload your image and it'll do lossless or lossy or whatever.
Yeah,
We got
it'll optimize it for you. They may have a conversion aspect to it also. I don't know, because I don't use it, but it's possible, because there are tools out there to upload your JPEG and have it create you the WebP version of that. What I'll do is, after I'll post a link to a site or a couple of sites that I know that you can do that process with. If you don't have a graphics program that already, you can save it as WebP.
right. We got some guilty parties in here that aren't optimizing their images. That's bad news bears.
Before we move into SEO, because I know we're getting we're gonna have only 10 minutes to talk about SEO and stuff like that. I
Right?
want to make sure that people understand, and this is one of the most common things that I come across from people with their websites, is that you may identify images that you want to use on your site, and you may export them as large as you may want to use them on the site. Say that's 1920 by 1080
Hmm.
for possible use as a background. But what if you want to use that in your blog post or in the sidebar or something like that? And those are much smaller sizes width
Yeah.
wise
Yeah.
in the page to use. And I see so many people just insert the large file size no matter where they need to use it. So it's super important when you're inserting these images into your site is to use the appropriately dimensioned image for the place that you're putting it in your site, whether it's your content or your sidebar, which is even smaller, maybe 350 pixels wide for a sidebar at max. You don't want to use the 1920 image there because it's way overkill. And WordPress and most of these systems will generate you alternate sized images, and you need to use the appropriate one in the appropriate spots.
Interesting. That, yeah, okay. So there's a lot to images, guys. Like a lot, right? Sunny is saying he's been waiting for this, and I mean, this is exciting. Okay, so uh, I will admit that it is very hard not to be lazy when it comes to your images too. I use something called Smush It, and Xanthia, who I still have to listen to how to say her name properly, uses Short Pixel or Pixel Short, which I also use. Um, it's interesting just to learn about how much we need to know about images, not just for SEO, but for the web. Now, Greg, how many clients, and all of you, how many clients have you had or know of who just upload an image, right? With photos. Ash
All of them.
Ash is giving us an image compressor. Cool. Got to check that one out. I haven't used that. But yeah, all of them. Because
All of them.
so how do you educate your clients? I think that's a huge one we have to hit on today.
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways too, right? Because a client will take a picture on their phone, nice iPhone, takes great pictures
Great.
now, and they will just like straight from the iPhone go and upload it to their site, going, putting it on there without, downsizing it or anything like that. So I basically just go over like images can't like raw images from your phone or your camera are not to be uploaded to the site.
Mm,
You always need to like put them on your computer, scale them for use on your website. And once they know that, either they start sending me all of their images to get, resized and sent back to them to put on their site, or just have me do it itself. But on the adverse of that, I also have clients that take these awesome pictures with their iPhones. And iPhone has a feature, I think, when you're going to share an image with someone, you can select which version of it. And by default, it doesn't like to send the original
full size.
copy. So I often get images sent to me from the customer from their iPhones that are too small to use on the site because it's not wanting to send me the large one over email. So,
It's, here's a great thing. I'm not sure who's saying this, but it says I educate them with the size of their invoice.
invoice?
Yeah, so basically they're putting it on their invoice, and it's a good education because technically they'd have to pay, if you have to do it. That's a really good idea. Because I know a lot of us are probably like, you go that extra mile. Client sends you
Yeah.
the image, and instead of being like, that's out of scope, man, probably just do it, right? So, but this is a great way to do it. And also, the one prospective client was complaining that their site was slow. That's 60 megabytes of images on their homepage. Oh, on their homepage. Um,
Well,
I know somebody uploaded I had a fish image on my a site before this that was really heavy. I think Ash pointed it out, and he was like, "Yo, Pip, get your SEO right." Right.
So, speaking of SEO, we should probably get into that a little bit because we got 5 minute countdown.
Greg said he was taking over this chat, guys, because I was all like, "We got to talk about the SEO because that's the most important."
Well, I mean, that's your forte, right? Don't you
Right.
want to talk about?
So there's a couple interesting things, which is
I'm giving you 5 minutes. Go for
right.
it.
Okay, 5 whole minutes. Well, SEO. So the reason I let you, Greg, let you do that was because if we actually pay attention to what the web developer does, if he's educated slightly in SEO, or he or she or anyone, then they know, parameters, or they're working with an SEO to discuss. Like, I got a call from a former client who got a new website. And so I met with the designer. Now, here's the difference with marketing, which I thought was phenomenal. This developer site's gorgeous, like gorgeous, right? But when we met, we got on a call and looked at a site, and they're like showing me a page on a website that's like just a picture, and it's gorgeous. And I'm dying inside because I'm like, this is the worst page in the world for SEO. There's nothing on it. And so that's where the differences come in. So depending on who your marketer is and what their strong point are, they're going to pay attention to other things. But a web developer who knows SEO, well, they know about it's mostly about the girth, or the size, the kilobytes of the image, that's the most important. Because, and I heard a rule of thumb, which is no more than 100 kilobytes, right? However, that's really hard to do when you have a 1600 pixel, 1600 by 16, what did you say, 1620?
Yeah, 1920 is sort of the new largest size that I export for background, if they're going to be used as background images.
Okay, so header images, what size do you think they should be on average if they're going?
If they go full screen,
yeah,
1920.
Okay, so
is what I'm doing.
For
you can probably get away with 1600 and see, like, have it stretch, especially if you have like image overlay. But if you have an image that goes edge to edge, you probably want it to be 1920 at minimum. If you don't have any fancy overlays on it, because if it's 1600 but it stretches to 19, you'll start to see a little bit of pixelation.
Right. Now, guys, Greg to go right at the hour, or the half hour up. So we got 2 minutes to get through this, which is any extra material you put. You know how in programs you can put like information about an image? Any extra information you put in that space is going to make your image heavier, right? So the other thing is GIFs. GIFs, whatever you want to call them, they're super heavy, yeah? Oh, that's 6 types of images, man. Because are they considered video or image?
Image.
Ooh. Okay, yeah. So they're super duper heavy, right? That's why we don't put them on our website.
Well, they could be super duper heavy if they're animated and they have a lot of frames.
Okay, yeah.
For
but
sure.
They could be light too, you're saying?
It really depends what the animated GIF is.
Will they slow down your site?
If they're heavy, they would.
Right. So here's an interesting thing, guys. On Google My Business, you can now upload GIFs or GIFs, so you can actually have animated image on your knowledge panel, which will catch the eye, right? So maybe a buy now with an arrow to your button. That'd be kind of cool. We'll see how that mucks up the search engine results pages. Anything else to know about SEO with images is location. So there's lots of discussions about, do I put locations? When you take a picture with your phone, you're actually in the meta description, meta information on your image. It's got geolocation in there. There's questions on if it affects SEO. Now, if you add it to Google My Business, maybe there's a chance because that's for local SEO. However, Greg and I were talking, and if you add it to your website, it might not make a difference, right? Because do you think the little crawlers are going like that's 3642 longitudinal? Okay, I'm more intelligent when I talk about geography. I swear. Um, longitude and latitude.
I think we determined when we were talking that we both are unsure of whether having the metadata information, location information in the image makes a difference to organic search results for your website.
Mm,
But we did both agree that having that information in there does make a difference for Google's image searches.
yes.
So if you're physically searching Google in the Google image search, it does absolutely make a difference. But whether or not your page, your home page, or your contact page on your website will have any organic benefit if it has the location information on the image that you post on that page, we are unsure at this moment.
Right. Yes,
I
exactly.
didn't have time to look. I didn't have time to look up, but it's a great question because if it does affect it, that's absolutely could be a game changer for your contact page.
Right. Well, there's a lot of different companies that offer this, and there's a lot of different theories, and we don't know for sure, but we'll probably know more in a year or so when we see what Mum does. Now, we're out of time. If you have questions or comments about or we missed something, let us know in the comments. And anything we talked about here, we'll add links to in the Facebook group. If you're not part of the Facebook group, it's Cyberpunk Geeks Marketing Mixer, and it's full of marketers and business owners who love marketing. So join us there, and we will see you not next week because it's Canada Day and we're both Canadian, but the week after. And you can look in our header what we'll be talking about because it's not up yet. So stay tuned. Okay, bye. Nice,
Everyone.
nice everybody.